In one of the modest single-story apartments that lined the streets, Lola stood by her kitchen window, staring outside with contented smile. She was the type of woman who radiates warmth. Her laughter could lighten up any room, and her kindness was known throughout the neighborhood. Tall with smooth dark skin that seemed to glow in the morning light, Lola was beautiful in effortless way. She worked as an interior designer, running her business from home, and everyone admired how well she carried herself. Today was a special day, and Lola was ready for it. She hummed a Christmas song underneath her breath as she adjusted a red bow on the small artificial tree she had placed in the corner of her room. Perfect, she murmured. Stepping back to admire her work, the tree wasn't fancy, but it brought her joy, and that was all that mattered. Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her thoughts. She picked it up and smiled at the name on the screen. Femi, her boyfriend of 2 years, was calling. "Good morning, my love." Femi's deep voice greeted her. "Good morning, darling. Merry Christmas," Lola replied, her voice full of excitement. They talked about their plans for the day. Femi promised to stop by later with a surprise, making Lola giggle like a teenager. He had a way of making her feel special, and she loved him for it. By the time their call ended, the neighborhood was already in full swing. The sounds of firecrackers going off in the distance startled her, but she chuckled. Next door, Shaliwa sat by her window, staring at Lola's cheerful figure as she hung Christmas lights on her balcony. Shaliwa was about the same age as Lola, but their lives couldn't have been more different. Where Lola was flourishing, Shaliwa felt like she was stuck in a quicksand. Shaliwa moved to the neighborhood a year ago after a breakup that left her heartbroken and financially drained. Her ex-boyfriend had not only cheated on her, but had also left her with debts she was still struggling to pay off. She worked as a sales assistant at a small supermarket, barely making enough to survive. She and Lola had struck up a friendship shortly after Shaliwa moved in. Lola was kind, too kind, Shaliwa often thought. She would offer to help her with little things, like buying groceries when Shaliwa was short on cash, or sharing leftover meals. Shaliwa smiled and thanked her every time, but deep down, she resented Lola's generosity. It felt like a spotlight on her own failures. On the surface, Shaliwa appeared to be a good friend. She would smile when Lola shared stories about Femi or her thriving business, but inside, envy festered like an open wound. Lola's life seemed so perfect, too perfect, Shaliwa thought. A loving boyfriend, a successful career, and a cheerful personality that drew people to her like bees to honey. One evening, Shaliwa overheard Lola laughing on the phone with Femi. She couldn't make out the words, but the happiness in Lola's voice was unmistakable. It stabbed at Shaliwa's heart like a dagger. Why does she get to have everything while I have nothing? The thought echoed in her mind, growing louder with each passing day. It didn't help that the neighborhood adored Lola. Even Mama Nkechi, the grouchy woman who ran the corner store, had nothing but praise for her. "That Lola is a blessing," she would say, always smiling, always kind. God will continue to bless her. Shaliwa's bitterness reached its peak in the weeks leading up to Christmas. She couldn't stand the sight of Lola decorating her home, singing Christmas songs, and looking forward to Femi's visit. It wasn't fair. The jealousy burned so brightly in her chest that it began to cloud her judgment. One afternoon, Shaliwa sat in her small, sparsely furnished apartment, staring at the peeling paint on the walls. She could hear Lola's laughter through the thin partition that separated their apartments. Femi's deep voice joined in, and it was more than Shaliwa could bear. She clenched her fists and paced the room, her mind racing. That was when the idea began to form, a dark, desperate idea that made her heart race. What if I took her happiness away? What if I made her feel the pain I have been carrying? Shaliwa dismissed the thought at first, but it kept coming back, stronger each time. By the time Christmas Eve arrived, she made up her mind. She would teach Lola a lesson about what it feels like to lose everything. Christmas morning came and Shaliwa set her plan in motion. She woke up early, determined to make everything seem normal. She prepared a pot of fried rice, adding generous amounts of pepper, chicken and vegetables to make it look irresistible. Then she added the poison, a small amount she had bought from a shady vendor at the local market. Her hands shook as she stirred the pot. For a moment, she hesitated. This is too much, she thought. But the image of Lola's smiling face flashed in her mind and her resolve hardened. When the rice was ready, Shalewa carefully packed it into a fancy takeaway container and tied it with a red ribbon. She took a deep breath, plastered a smile on her face and walked over to Lola's door. Lola answered almost immediately, her face brightening up when she saw Shalewa. "Ah, Shalewa, Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Lola," Shalewa replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I made some extra rice and I thought you might like some." Lola's smile grew even wider. "That's so kind of you. Thank you, Shalewa. You didn't have to do that, but I really appreciate it." As Shalewa walked back to her apartment, she felt a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. She had done it. Now all she could do was to wait. Lola carried the container to her kitchen. Humming as she placed it on the counter, she opened it and inhaled the aroma. This smells amazing," she said to herself. She quickly grabbed a plate and dished out a generous portion, looking forward to enjoying the meal. Little did she know, the kindness she had always shown Shalewa would now be tested in the most unimaginable way. Lola placed the plate of fried rice on the dining table, excited to dig in. It'd been a lively morning, and she was looking forward to a quiet comfort of enjoying a meal while watching one of her favorite movies. The aroma of the food filled the small dining area, and she couldn't help but smile, thinking of how thoughtful Shalewa had been to share this on Christmas Day. Immediately she sat down, she closed her eyes and prayed quietly over the food. After praying, she opened her eyes with a smile on her face. Then she reached out for the remote to set up the movie. A thought crossed her mind. Why not eat in the living room instead? She loved the cozy atmosphere there, with the Christmas lights twinkling on the tree and her favorite couch calling her name. Grabbing the plate of food, she headed towards the living room. But then, in her excitement, her foot caught the edge of the rug. "Oh no!" she gasped as the plate slipped from her hands. Time seemed to slow as she watched the food scatter across the tiled floor. Lola groaned in frustration. "What a mess," she muttered, bending down to clean it up. Her dog, Bruno, wagged his tail and sniffed curiously at the food. "Bruno, no," Lola said, laughing softly as she tried to shoo him away. But Bruno was quick, already licking the rice before she could stop him. "Well, Merry Christmas to you too," Lola chuckled. Deciding to let him have it, she gathered the rice into his bowl, setting it on the floor for him to finish it, and then went back to the kitchen to dish herself another portion. Just as she reached for the spoon, her phone rang. It was Femi. "Hey love," she answered. They chatted for a long time, their conversation moving from light-hearted jokes to deeper topics about their future. Femi's voice always had a way of calming her, but before she knew it, half an hour had passed. "I should let you go," Lola said reluctantly. "I haven't had my lunch yet." "Okay, my queen, I will see you soon," Femi replied. As Lola hung up and turned back towards the dining area, her gaze fell on Bruno. He wasn't wagging his tail or looking up at her like he usually did. Instead, he lay motionlessly on the floor, his bowl of rice barely touched. A wave of panic washed over her. "Bruno," she called, rushing to his side. She gently shook him, but he didn't move. His body felt limp, his breathing shallow. No, no, no," Lola whispered, her heart racing. Tears filled her eyes as she cradled Bruno in her arms. Lola's hands shook as she grabbed her phone and called Femi back. He picked up almost immediately. "Femi, something is wrong," she said, her voice trembling. "What happened?" Femi's tone turned serious. "It's Bruno. He ate the food Shalewa gave me, and now he's not moving. Femi, I don't know what to do." "Calm down," Femi said, though his own voice was tense. "Don't touch the food again. I am coming right now." Within 20 minutes, Femi arrived with two of his friends, Kunle and Tayo, who had connections with the local law enforcement. They examined the scene carefully, avoiding the food that was still scattered on the floor. "Something's not right," Kunle said, frowning. "Dogs don't just collapse like this unless they have been poisoned." The word poison sent chills down Lola's spine. She couldn't believe it. Shalewa had been her friend, or so she thought. "Are you sure Shalewa gave you this food?" Tayo asked. his expression grave. Yes, Lola said, her voice barely above a whisper. She brought it over this morning, said it was Christmas rice. Femi's jaw tightened. We need to involve the police. The officers arrived quickly after Femi's call. They took pictures of the scene, collected the remaining food as evidence, and asked Lola to recount everything that happened. Do you suspect anyone? One of the police officers asked. Lola hesitated, her heart pounding. Accusing Shalewa felt unreal, like something out of a bad dream. But the facts were staring her in the face. It was Shalewa, she finally said. She gave me the food this morning. The police officer nodded. We will need to question her. When the officers knocked on Shalewa's door, she opened it with a bright, unsuspecting smile. Good afternoon, officers. Merry Christmas, she greeted them. Her demeanor changed instantly when they explained why they were there. What? Poison? Me? Shalewa stammered, her eyes wide. I would never. But the police officer weren't convinced. They asked her to come to the station for further questioning, and though she protested loudly, she eventually complied. Back at the station, under the weight of evidence and questioning, Shalewa's facade began to crack. Her initial denial turned to defensiveness, and eventually she broke down. I didn't mean to hurt her, she sobbed, her hands covering her face. I just wanted her to suffer a little. She has everything I will never have. Do you know how hard it is to watch someone live the life you've always dreamt of? I couldn't take it anymore. The officers exchanged grim looks as Shalewa confessed to buying the poison and adding it to the rice. When the news reached Lola, she felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and disbelief. She couldn't understand how someone she had cared for, someone she had considered a friend, could harbor so much hatred. As the days passed, Lola found herself reflecting deeply on what had happened. She realized that kindness, while powerful, couldn't always shield her from harm, but she also understood that Shalewa's actions stemmed from a place of pain, envy, emotions that had consumed her entirely. The tragic events of that Christmas taught Lola the importance of discernment, of being cautious about who to trust, even when the face they show you seems genuine. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap on the notification bell for more interesting stories like this one. Goodbye.